Hello, everybody, especially our audience online. And I will try to address one single point of experience of combining trees and ChatGPT. We started at the Offenburg University. Offenburg is Germany, about 20 kilometers from here. And for those who don't know it, in 4 kilometers to the east, the Germany begin. Well, so it is a really small part, and it was initiated by the appearance of ChatGPT 3 as a free platform, and then we tried to see how does it work if you try to apply it in the practice. About my person, I'm teaching trees since 20 years at the universities and in the industry, and have a lot of experience how an average trees user trained to trees once will use it later. But in our part of the innovation process, we have already defined the problems, and you want to address each problem separately. So let's take an example. An example of a problem I'm using as a test problem with my students and in the industry, and have a huge amount of statistical data, how the people react if they face this problem. Ship hull cleaning, how to make it faster, and to remove from ship hull maritime organisms like shell layers, for example, with high pressure water jetting. So you see the initial situation, how to make it faster. And then we ask ChatGPT to give us this answer within 1 second. You can repeat it yourself anytime. So all this based on 3.5 version of ChatGPT. So maybe the 4 is better. I didn't check it. So you see this answer from use the correct nozzle, create obverse, use hot water, consider using cleaning agents. So that is all, more or less. And what happened if you try to help ChatGPT with the most statistically, most frequently used trees inventive principle and pre-formulated like a prompt. You see this prompt in the green square on the top of the slide. Change aggregate state of water jet for faster cleaning ship hull from maritime organisms. So in red is the recommendation coming from trees, and this text, this prompt is formulated automatically using a simple procedure. And then in the first response, as you see, we have that ChatGPT proposed actually only one solution. That's interesting. It looks like a human. So not 10 ideas, only one idea. And it is a very strong idea, apply cavitation cleaning technologies. A lot of engineers don't know that it's possible at all. So, and moreover, you see here in 6 steps, the recommendation how to achieve this. So a quite high quality answer, but only one. And then we simply regenerate the response without giving additional prompts or answers. Please make it again. And after 5 regenerated responses, we see that we have using tree support 2 blocks of answers. The left one in blue are the ideas related to recommended trees principle, change aggregate state from 1 to 4, using dry ice, using ice particle. These are also called controlled answer I'm expecting from my students to this principle. And on the right side, you see in the gray block other ideas. They're also valuable, but they're not related to the trees principle. So as you see, ChatGPT is working like human, giving you correct answers for the trees principle, but also giving you additional brainstorming ideas not related to this. Okay, let's go ahead. What happens if we apply more than one principle? But at first, this intermediate slide. At the same time, what is actually also valuable to GPT delivering you in each answer, with each idea, with each regeneration, some secondary problems you have to take into consideration. So warning us about possible contradictions. And then what happens if we want to think about the quality, I have also mentioned the quality of the answer is higher than a human quality of an answer, because, okay, that is the quality of ChatGPT, of AI. And then we want to continue our research and ask what happens if we're using the same problem and give ChatGPT more prompts using trees inventive principles, or better to say sub-principles, pre-formulated automatically for their use. For this purpose, we're using the simple semantic transformation, starting with inventive principle on the left side of this block, and using information we know about the problem. For example, what is our working tool, what is our target object, useful function, harmful effect. It's all quite complete described in one the present publication you can find in the bottom of the slide. So it generates about 200 prompts, different prompts with different strengths, with different importance. But nevertheless, it makes the work automatically. And if you try to distribute the prompts along engineering domains, you see about 37 prompts are general, universal art. They're not depending on any technology field, and other prompts are distributed among design, mechanical, etc. domains, including digital. So it helps the user to apply some ideas in the specific field of his or her experience. It's not necessary to explore the answer for 200 ideas at all. I'm skipping how does it work. I'm going on to this slide and come back to the GPT application. You see here that this, at the moment, 200 prompts can be distributed divided in 9 fields, depending on the abstraction level of the tree's prompt, from low to high. Low, it's actually quite usable for direct application in CAD or design, and high abstraction level needs additional analysis, gain of additional knowledge, etc. And the same way, using statistical ranking of the tree's sub-principles, from low used not so frequently to high use almost in each idea generation. So you can focus yourself on those principles, or tree's principles with high ranking and at first low abstraction level. So what happens if you apply this approach to the ChatGPT? Well, at first, summary of 2 generated responses. As you see here, that we are using here as an example of the tree's principle in our operator of automated degeneration number 42. It's one sub-principle: apply phase transitions in water jet during its operation from solid to liquid or liquid to gas. So it is a principle with a low statistical ranking, because it's used not so frequently in the daily work. If you are a fan of the contradiction table or matrix, you can find out that this principle is recommended rather seldom. And as you see, trees with ChatGPT doesn't have any trouble, doesn't struggle with this two abstract principle in comparison with my students or even engineers. So giving you immediately what I'm expecting to hear here. That was actually amazing. Secondly, we also have an experience of application of the so-called sustainable trees principles. So in this one, number 66, use natural or easy recyclable materials as substances. 10 students I checked before this presentation, they gave them this principle. You see on the top in red, and 20 minutes time. And only one of them reached, only one from 10 reached the half of the ideas you see here. Normally, within 15-20 minutes, each student gave 2 to 3 answers. And this answer was get immediately amazing accuracy from 3.5. So it really identifies ways to minimize environmental problems very fast and professionally. And now some points for discussion, the positive and negative sides. At first, the trees teacher would say ChatGPT is much better trees student as a human one. And moreover, it doesn't forget what he or it has learned. That's great advantage. Secondly, you see that the quality of the answers is better. No matter how you prompt what tools are using, it helps ChatGPT to be more accurate, definitely. And so that's the first very positive results. But there are a lot of negative results, and some of them are maybe connected with the current state of the generative transformers. The first one is, you see, you need to take into consideration that very often the first response is wrong, is incomplete, or even sometimes you give to ChatGPT some abstract universal trees principle, for example, of inversion. Put something on the head or use another way around. We got very frequently for such types of principle, the first answer, I cannot find any useful solution for this at all. And then you ask again and again, and after the third or fourth time, suddenly a solution appears. Very interesting phenomenon, sometimes like humans as well. Then we need a regeneration of responses. We are using to make the experiments clean. We never added additional information, simply clicked on regenerate, and after 3 to 5 responses, we got more or less a view that no new ideas can be generated with ChatGPT in accordance with one trees-based prompt. And that makes no sense to generate more with the same. Secondly, we understood that some of the trees principles are not understandable by ChatGPT. So it is a really hard work you have to fulfill during experiments. And the problem is, of course, that the ChatGPT is not staying, it's continually trained and developed. So what you are doing now maybe will not be actual anymore in the next version. So that is also one of the restriction or aspect you have to take into consideration. Then what you see here, that some solution ideas for design problems are still too general. And if you try to use these ideas, to visualize them and apply text-to-image transformations, they're also not reliable. And actually, in 9 of 10 proposals, they are not acceptable, not at all. So it's a long way to how to transform the formal generated design idea into the workable CAD solution. And as next, if you apply 10 trees prompts or 20 trees prompts, I don't say 200, you have a huge amount of data which should be condensed to the inventive principles or solution ideas which are not which are unique and somehow clustered in blocks. And such an application could be a future research in this field. That is more or less all I wanted to share with you. I wonder what is the next slide here. So a positive, greater accuracy, and as I already told, much better than average trees trained student, unfortunately. And thank you for your attention, and invite everybody to join the next ITRIA conference held completely online in Offenburg. And to those who don't know it, this image was generated using text-to-image generator, AI-based, in about 10 steps. And the last one was make the face more friendly. So more or less, it doesn't look quite friendly, but the better version was selected by me. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Pavel. So we have several long minutes for questions, both with the audience here and also online people. Guillaume, Nasser, Stelian, Ilias. So that's already 4 here.
Thank you for your presentation. In your experience, are there any inventive principles that are less likely to give interesting ideas with LLMs, or they are all equals?
As I told you, some principles are not really quite understood. And if you are running the test with ChatGPT, you have your control answers, and expecting to, as a trees expert, to see this answer among the answers proposed by ChatGPT. So there are some principles that don't work. And your question was?
And what are the leads? So what do you think we could do to improve this behavior?
To be honest, I don't know. We are still in the phase of investigation. So I think that depends on how rapidly the trees, the AI models will be, or tools will be developed in the future. And all my experience is made on the 3.5 version, the most. Now we're running a project, hopefully we can be ready before the conference, comparing the latest version of OpenAI, ChatGPT, Google, and maybe any other application we shall see to the same to compare AI tools not with humans but with themselves. But well, how to? The question is maybe the answer maybe how to bring trees completely to AI. That is maybe one of the answers.
And do you think giving examples of solved cases with these inventive principles could help the system apply these principles?
Maybe. I'm not able to change the AI. So I'm looking now as a formal user of this tool and compare with the human performance.
Thank you for your presentation. I just have maybe I don't understand it very well, but in your opinion, when you give inventive principle to the ChatGPT, it gives better idea, or when you don't give any information to it, the idea is better to apply and it's more innovative than when you give the inventive principle and then you explain the inventive principle to the ChatGPT.
What we have understood, and that is checked and actually confirmed, it's better to give to ChatGPT, I'm talking now about ChatGPT only, the prompts based on the tree's sub-principles, which are clear and focused on one direction. If you give to ChatGPT complete, for example, tree's principle with 3, 4, 5 sub-principles, the results are really random.
Okay.
But using, for example, all 5 sub-principles for one principle give 20, 30, 40 ideas, and about 20% of these ideas are corresponding to this sub-principle, and 80 maybe, a bit less, are simply other ideas, a kind of accompanying ideas which are not connected to tree's principle you have used.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ian, did you have a question or a comment?
I really like to thank Pavel about this investigation, because many people think that now ChatGPT will replace people, and I also, for example, was curious to use it just because I had a concern how powerful it is with respect to an expert, and from this moment I'm still confident that ChatGPT, without the intervention of clear experts, how to guide it in order to extract proper information, will not necessarily deliver the proper answers. And in this respect, I really encourage also these next researches you have proposed to investigate the other models about the potential of really being creative. My opinion is they are not really creative. They extract information from this huge database according to the context, the pattern you provide in your prompt, but I think also this is a good space for exploration, how we can better interact. Somebody asked this morning about how to better interact with such systems in order to discover their potential. And in this respect, maybe we can propose a future task force or maybe a future research project in a consortium, because we can use the API from such systems, and then to introduce the training patterns into those systems in order to specialize the system for specific areas.
Well, that's an interesting direction of work, definitely, to train the AI. But concerning the creativity, I don't support the opinion that the moment ChatGPT is less creative than the human, because it depends on the definition, on measurement of creativity in terms of ideas and quality of these ideas, of the formulations of the ideas. It's better than an average human, definitely. But what happens next with these ideas? How to select the right one from 100? So here we are on the same level as we were with trees many years ago. And the average user, not of ChatGPT or trees, average engineers, need a solution which is implementable. And I saw a lot of disappointed industrial user of trees with ChatGPT. Why we cannot get a real solution we can patent immediately and realize it immediately on our CAD stations to a design. So the average user is expecting the final ready solution, not the idea. And I fear that in this case we can, if we can change this game, we will be on the higher level with ChatGPT and trees as with trees only, but still the people would prefer to work without trees, at least.
Okay, next question.
First of all, thank you very much for your presentation. I had a couple of questions concerning one. If I understood correctly, there was one. Oh, okay. So one case it means one. Let's say you evaluated 200 ideas, different 200 ideas. In the context of reproducibility, how valuable do you think to explore the same process for different problems with a higher, lower difficulty, maybe less familiar, also to see how resilient are the remarks, both positive and negative, that we extracted? So this is for reproducibility, would be my first question.
Well, of course, I have illustrated this presentation only with one problem. We tested a lot of them, the standard problem used in teaching, but also the real problems in the practice. And in all cases, we saw that application trees and ChatGPT delivering the better results as only ChatGPT, only trees, or using nothing. But in many real industrial cases, we couldn't reach with these efforts the final solution, final idea maybe, 1 from 10, but it hasn't been recognized immediately after the session. So that's one of the tasks to be solved. And of course, it's an important work, but very time consuming to apply this approach or AI and trees to many ideas. And there's a proposal to create a kind of consortium or working group on this subject and to coordinate the activities. It could be very helpful, but before what we need to define what we expect after the job is done, why it is necessary to do before we start to fight. We have to evaluate, to anticipate what are the results, if we will win or not.
Yeah, because just a follow-up, the question was really related to, for example, the observation you made about some principles working better than others, the sub-principles, in order to have a stronger back into these beginning results. extending and observing them across multiple use cases will further give more resiliency to these and results, both the positive and the negative. Maybe you can find in some other specific use cases that some principles work better, for example, not like in the intended use case.
I don't think that the TRIZ principles are less efficient. They're specific, and it depends on the problem. Sometimes a principle or sub-principle working in terms of sub-principles. Some sub-principle is used very seldom, but if it will meet its problem, that will deliver a very strong solution. But statistically, it's more or less not relevant, yeah, because it's really works very seldom. And the big problem with TRIZ and ChatGPT, in this case, I've shown you a huge amount of ideas. Of course, there is a correlation of about 80% between the total amount of ideas and the amount of good ideas, but what is good idea is also another question.
Okay, thank you. We have an online question. How do you determine whether the result of the ChatGPT is TRIZ related or not?
I simply have, I will not change the screen. I can simply say that you can definitely see yourself as a TRIZ specialist if you give to ChatGPT a prompt, apply natural materials to solve a problem, and then you'll get an answer, an idea that it is working, but not related to natural materials. Well, that means that it doesn't relate it to the concrete selected TRIZ principles. Maybe another TRIZ principle will deliver this idea. But we are looking how accurate TRIZ is understood by ChatGPT, or in other words, how accurate does ChatGPT follow the concrete prompt of TRIZ, the recommendation, and see that that is again repeating like humans, one or two ideas corresponding to the TRIZ principles, and double amount of ideas which are simply brainstorming ideas, which are repeated each answer again and again. So more or less stupidly repeated by ChatGPT, the standard sometimes obvious ideas, etc. Mm-hmm. And with the help of TRIZ prompts, you can pick the real ideas which are not evident. But you need, for this procedure, you need time. Maybe the next step is to automate the whole process. But we are at least one step before it will happen.
Okay, thank you. Any other comment or questions? Okay, Nishan.
So thank you for your presentation. I'm just curious about how you said that it's after more than 3 answers that we get a good idea, a creative one. And I'm curious about how to assess that and how to know when we get the good idea and not just a generative idea that will not work. How do we evaluate the answers if we're not experts? If someone who's just an intern, for example, who wants to know if the answer is right or not, at what point does the person stop?
Well, thank you. I try to answer your question in 3 steps. At first, each idea generated is valuable. You don't know in advance if it will work in your context or not. So we gather independent ideas without restriction with which tool this idea, or which we TRIZ support or not TRIZ one idea or another idea has been gained first. Secondly, in my presentation, I use a standard problem, and I knew that for proposed TRIZ principle, there are some so-called control ideas, right answers, like in the examination. And I look if these right answers will be also proposed by ChatGPT. And sometimes I got this answer, but after third, fourth, or fifth regeneration of my answer, without changing it at all. It was the condition of the experiment. No change, simply put the same question again and again. And well, that is all. And in the real life, of course, you don't know which idea is right or not. If you try to apply trees at ChatGPT with trees to one problem, and you get many ideas, you don't know which one. It's not about the evaluation at first, it's about the amount of independent ideas.
Okay, any other question or comments? Still?
Yeah, when you have a solution all the time, you have to have a set of criteria to assess something, yes? So, which I recommend is set up a set of criteria, and then you can investigate, even with ChatGPT, for example, if a solution is fitting with this criteria. Sometimes you can also ask to criticize the solution with respect to a given criteria, and then we'll see that even what ChatGPT generated, we start criticizing that solution. And that is a good process for learning in your case where you like to grow your professional, yeah.
Yeah, I have two questions. In fact, the first one is: have you experienced in putting on the server a software or something that you could play with, or is it still things that you interface with ChatGPT live when you are doing such exercises? Or
well, of course, a project in this direction is running, but I have presented here the experience of pure application of ChatGPT 3.5 as it is, and adding the automatically generated prompts, standard prompts, to ChatGPT manually. And many of my students who are learning trees did the same with their own problems, and have a huge amount of experimental material. But to be honest, somehow I have a feeling that the students which were not really motivated in this research don't reach, maybe as an average future user of trees and ChatGPT, the exciting results for their real problems. And they were disappointed with this. They expected more than they got. And that could be a problem like the problem with trees, standard trees user in the industry.
okay, so we slowly reaching the end. Nasser, you have one more question? Can you repeat the question for the people online?
Yes. The question was, is there any difference between the previous and the new version of ChatGPT? We don't have an experience. We are running the project to check it, but we will come back to 3.5 and simply compare ChatGPT with BART and to see the difference. For example, the attempts to compare ChatGPT in this concern with the Microsoft Bing chat